Hey Grinder School, this is CFTheNatural, and I'd like to go over a couple of hands where I believe that it is correct to go ahead and get the money in, even though you know with virtually 100% certainty that your opponent has the current nuts. You know, as you guys know, anytime that you're drawing or you have some kind of a decent hand and somebody gets it in on you, you're always sort of guessing, at what they have. You're trying to range them, and you may be saying their range is weighted toward this or weighted toward that. I hope that a lot of what you use is the type of player they are. Obviously, against somebody playing 38-10, we're going to put them on a tighter range than a guy playing 82-16 over here or something. And you'll see as this video goes on how important it is to know your opponents. But the bottom line is that there are spots where even though you know at that point that your opponent has the current nuts, you still have the proper odds to get all your money in. And I want to go over a couple of those spots that happened to me in the last couple of days. And it's really key to understand, like I said, your opponent, because some of the softwares, like this one here, notice it's saying 22% for this guy, 35% for me, etc. It's looking at the cards. Some of the software, the HUDs and things, will give you a basic percentage. In particular, one that I use on Bovada called Hold'em Indicator or Omaha Indicator, it will tell you the percentage of equity that your hand has based on their algorithm. The problem with that is that it doesn't take into account the people you're playing against. So for example, if you have top two pair on the turn, it may say that you have 62% equity, meaning that, say you're playing against two people, meaning 62% of the time against two random opponents on the turn with top two pair, that hand will win. The problem is it doesn't take into account your opponents. And if one of those guys is playing 10-4, right, really, really, really nitty and tight, and he shoves on you, I can tell you with 99.9% certainty that top two pair is not good 62% of the time. It's probably not good 10% of the time, okay? Maybe against a random PLO opponent, a guy like up here, this give me your Ka playing 54-26, maybe against him it's good 62%, maybe. Not against a guy playing tighter than me. It wouldn't be good against me if I shove on you, I can promise you. I shove on you on the turn, two pair is never, ever, ever, ever good. Not 1/10 of 1%. So that's where those programs really fail. And you have to, it's incumbent upon you to be looking at the hand, looking at your opponents, looking at your outs, and figuring out truly what kind of equity you have. So let me go over a couple of spots where this happened to me and show you how I do it. How I figure it out on the fly and my logic behind getting my money in even though I might know that I'm behind. I'm going to be using, of course, some of the tools for equity, but bear in mind that when I played these hands, I did it all in my head, and I did it, within the 20 seconds or the seconds that I had, 20 or 30 seconds at most that I had to make the decision. So this first hand is played on Juicy Stakes. It's some 4 PLO. We're only 4-handed at this time. A couple people left the table. So I'm sitting here with a pretty nice hand in the small blind, 9-10, Jack King, double suited. This is a very connected hand. This has what we call smooth equity, okay, really well distributed equity. A hand like this is going to flop very well a very high percentage of the time. It may not often flop a huge hand, but it's going to flop pretty well. This is a really nice hand. I would probably call a raise from any position with this hand. See a flop. We get a limp by this loose player here. We get a min raise from this Damien 27. I've played quite a bit against Damien. You can see almost 1,700 hands. He's a little bit looser tagged than me, but I would still call him a tag. And this is a guy, you notice he's winning money 50% of the time at Showdown. He only goes to Showdown 24%. Very similar numbers to me. I think I'm 52%. I go to Showdown 23%, so we're almost dead on there. His aggression factor doesn't really change by street, which might be a little bit of a weakness in my opinion. But overall, he's a pretty solid player. This is a guy that isn't getting his money in unless he has a big hand. Okay, he's just not going to be playing guessing games and speculative things, and getting it in light. If he puts his money in, he has something big. That's just the kind of player he is, very similar to myself. I, of course, go ahead and call the raise. I would have called a bigger raise even. This is a hand that's definitely good enough to see a flop against anybody, even out of position. So we get a nice family four-way pot. And it's an interesting flop here. I pick up top two pair. As you know, that's really not that big of a hand in PLO. On a rainbow board, it's a little bit stronger. Of course, I wish that there was a flush draw out there because I have two of them here, although obviously the club is a lot stronger. But this isn't bad. I also have a straight draw, notice, 8, 9, 10, jack. So I have an open-ended straight draw, top two pair, and a backdoor flush draw. That's a pretty damn good flop for me. And I go ahead and lead out. I bet about 2/3 pot, 22 into 32. Because I have such a strong hand, I would like to narrow the field if possible. It's a dry board, and I want to, get some value for what I have here. We get a fold. This guy calls. And now we get a raise from Damien. Now, what does Damien do this with? Well, I'm going to tell you right now that I don't think he does this with anything less than a set. Okay? That's the kind of player he is. He plays, again, similar to me. He's a little bit looser than I am, though I show up as 40-0 here, but it's only 5 hands. My overall stats are closer to like 28 or 29-8, and he's 38-10. So we raise close to the same amount. He raises a teeny bit more, but he min raises a lot. Rarely does more than min raise as he just did there. And he does play some more hands than me. But we have a similar style. I look at this board. I probably wouldn't even raise with this hand here. I'm just going to call. I have so many outs I can hit. The only thing I'm raising with here is going to be a set. Because if you have a set, you're very vulnerable to hands like mine, draws that can outdraw you. Now, I'm holding a king and a 10. So he could have the last two kings to have a top set of kings. He could have the last two tens. This is PLO. It's probably more likely has a set of 8s, in my opinion, just because I don't have an 8, I have blockers. But he could have any one of them. But my best guess is that he has a set, which is obviously the nuts right now, at least if it's top set. And probably the nuts against 3 of us. If he doesn't have a set, then he's got the nuts as of this street. So what do I do here? I don't think I want to re-raise. My hand isn't that strong. But let's take a look at what I got. Okay, I've got an open-ended straight draw. Well, that's 8 outs. And assuming he doesn't have a set of kings or a set of 10s, we don't know that for sure, but again, he's more weighted toward a set of 8s. Any king or 10 is going to give me a bigger full house than him. So that's 4 more outs. Okay, so that's 12 outs right now. Okay, so the point is 33% is what I need to make this call. Do I have 33% equity? If I do have 12 outs, and remember, I have a backdoor flush draw. I could go runner too. Not that very likely, but that counts as an out or two. But I think I have, at least the 8 outs for the straight. Okay, that would give me 33% right there. 4 times 8 is 32. So if he has a set of 10s or a set of kings, so that my 2 pairs is no good, I cannot hit a full house to beat him. If a straight will beat him, and I have those 8 outs right there, that gives me the 33% right there to make the call. You add in the backdoor flush draw. You add in the possibility that, for example, if he does have a set of 10s, I at least have the king outs. That's 2 more outs. If he has a set of 8s, I have 2 kings and 2 10s. Now I've easily got the equity to make this call. So this is how I do it in my head, and figure it out, okay? Because I don't think he does this with any less than a set, and I know I'm behind here. So I make the call because I have the odds to do so, even though I know that this tight player is ahead of me right now. Now this guy dumps it all in. Doesn't have, a full stack. What does he do it with? He could have a set. But more likely I put him on like 2 pair. My best guess is a guy, because I've seen him play. I know this guy. And I'm thinking he has like 10-8 or king-8. Maybe even king 10 like me, even though I have it. This is PLO. He could. My best guess is this is the kind of guy that will stack off with 2 pair. In fact, I had a note on him that he would stack off with 2 pair or less. I'd seen him stack off with a pair of aces on a board like this, say, for example, just naked aces. So I don't give this shove here anywhere near the credence that I give Damien putting in his $1.20. Okay, that I know is a set at least, but well, there's nothing higher than a set here. But he could have a set maybe plus a draw. But this guy I think could have as little as like 2 pair. I don't think he necessarily does this with just aces against 2 of us, but I think he would do it with 2 pair. So, and Damien just calls. And again, there's no real reason for me to shove over. You know, I still can call this 80 cents. I can still let my hand go at that point if I have to, and save myself a couple of dollars or almost. So I call. Now, turn helps me out. Now, at this point, I have a flush draw to go with my 2 pair and open-ended straight draw. Okay. Rafigna 87 obviously has put in all his money. So I go ahead and I put in the rest of my money. Okay, well let's take a look at this now. And well, let's do this. And of course Damien calls. Okay, so the money goes in. I'm not going to fold because I now pick up an extra potentially 9 outs here. Okay. And so now if I have 9 flush outs, 6 open-ended straight outs instead of 8 because the flush is already counting. So that's 15 outs. And then the 2 kings and 2 tens. So I have potentially 19 outs, right, to improve here. Okay. 9 and 4, 13, and the 6 outs on the straight. So 19 outs. So I've got close to 40% equity. And it's $1.81 to win a pot of $10. Okay, so basically $2 to win a pot of $10. I easily have the equity. But let's take a look at this. First, let's go ahead and see. Okay, so I was right. He had a set, bottom set, which was most likely given the blockers. This guy had naked top 2 pair. Notice he has no straight draw, no flush draw. He just had top 2 pair. I'm not getting my. If all I had was king 10 here, by the way, there's no way I'm ever calling that raise from Damien. I only did it because I had the straight draw and the backdoor flush draw, which turned into a flush draw. This guy just has a naked 2 pair. Okay. He has the least equity, as you can see. Best he can do is really tie me. And Damien had bottom pair. And he also had a straight draw, 10, jack, queen, king. So he has a straight draw also. So he had an open-ended straight draw and he had bottom set. I'm sorry. So he had obviously a very strong hand. And I knew he had at least a set. And that's indeed what he had. But did I have the proper equity to get this money in? Well, let's take a look. So let's launch the equity calculator. Okay, so notice it shows all of our hands. It shows the board. And let's calculate. Okay, so I've got 39% equity, all right? 39% after the turn. I'm almost 40% to beat this guy. And he's sitting here with a set and an open-ended straight draw. But I've got so many outs, I have 39% equity. Well, what did I need to get my money in? Well, as you saw, I had to put $1.81 in to win a pot of $10.03. Okay, so let's call up the calculator. And again, as I said, I'm doing all this in my head. Let's remember. Here it is. Let's bring in our calculator. So 1.81 divided by 10.03. So I've got to be good about less than 20% of the time, and I'm going to be good 40%. Okay, I have double the equity I need. So this is easy to get the money in, even though I know, trust me, when I put this $1.81 in, I know I'm behind. 100%, not even 99%. I know for absolute certain that this guy is ahead of me. Not very worried about him and he's short stack, but I know that Damien has got a set. I didn't know he had an open-ended straight draw, but I know he has a set. And so I know that I'm behind. But with 19 outs, as you can see, I have that almost 40% equity, and I only needed 20% equity to make this a break-even call, a break-even shove. Okay, no matter what he holds, really. So Now, he could have had maybe a higher flush draw. If he did have, say, the ace of clubs in another club, then my flush draw is no good. So that would have hurt, obviously. But unless he had a higher flush draw, I'm just in really, so I shouldn't say no matter what he holds. But unless he holds a set plus a higher flush draw, I'm in really good shape. And I was willing to take that chance. Okay, if he had that, then so be it. Unfortunately, I don't bink the river. And so he does win the pot, and I lose my $5 stack. But I'm okay with that because all I can do is play the odds properly. Okay, and as you just saw, I had literally double the odds I needed to get that money in. So that's if I play this hand 100 times, I'm going to make money. Okay, because the times I lose, like this one, versus the times I win, I'm going to come out ahead. Okay, because I only needed to be good 20% of the time to make that a profitable call, and I'm going to be good 39% of the time. So it's not so much about are you behind at that point, because against a tight player, I know I'm behind, but I still had the equity to call. And like I said, this is the type of stuff that you got to be willing and able to do in your head on the fly. Figure out your outs, figure out what they probably have. I didn't have the luxury of doing all this in 10 or 15 minutes like I did here with you and you, Jules. I did all that in my head, but that's what you need to do. But I felt fine after the hand because I made the proper play. And the fact that I didn't bink on the river, that's out of my control. But I got my money in with the proper odds, and unfortunately I didn't get there. But in the long run, I will get there enough that it's a plus EV play. Okay, let's take a look at one other that I have, and let me find it. Here we go. Okay, so this hand was played on Bodog. Let's get this calculator out of the way and make this larger. Okay, and this hand was played today, and it's a very similar situation. It's going to show a spot of getting good odd, but knowing that your opponent is ahead of you. So we look at the table, and we already see we got a 72-0, we got an 80-20, a 55-18, and here we got a 10-0. And so this is the guy I'm going to be playing a hand against. 21 hands, you can see he's playing tighter than I am. I'm 25-6. He's 10-0. He's playing very tight. Okay. When a player like this puts his money in, you know he has a big hand. Okay. That's the way I play. That's the way he plays. There's no question about it. Let me just verify that. Okay. So we're all set. So let's take a look at this hand. Okay. So I'm sitting here on the button. Queens with a suit. The 8 is a dangler, but a pretty decent hand. We get a limp, a fold. I just call. I could raise here, but it's really not that strong of a hand, pair of queens. And easy for an ace to hit or something like that. We're going to go multi-way. If I raise, I'm not going to fold out players like this, playing 80-20 and 72-0, even though I have position. I wouldn't hate a raise here, but I feel like, my philosophy, play small ball until we hit something, and I prefer to keep the pot cheaper. If this was a stronger card, like a jack, 10, then I might, an ace. If I was double suited, if this was an ace of spades, then I would be raising. But because it isn't, I'm really just sitting with a pair of queens and a potential second nut flush draw. And so unless I hit the right board, I really don't have that strong a hand. I'd rather just keep the price low until I see how the flop comes. So we go 4-way to the flop. So this is a pretty good flop. Obviously, I hit top set and I hit the second nut flush draw. Now, the nice thing about the second nut flush draw is that for once I don't have to play this hand fast. 90% of the time when I flop a set, the board is coordinated enough that I cannot afford to just call bets. Meaning if, say, one of these guys bets 20 cents, another person calls, I have to raise. I can't just call and kind of try to trap because it's too easy for them to hit a flush or say a jack comes here, to give them a straight or something like that. But I have the second nut flush draw on top of the set, and so I can afford to not try to scare everybody out of the pot, whereupon if I didn't have the flush draw, I really have to raise on the flop, get as much money in as I can, because if they're drawing, I need to charge them. I can't let them get there for 20 cents. I need to make them pay $1.20, $1.40, whatever it's going to be to suck out on me. Because I probably have the nuts right now. But as we just saw, that can change from street to street. So the nice thing about here is that potentially I have a chance to maybe not play the hand so quickly. So this player 2 bets half pot. And he's a very tight player, so I know he has a piece of this board. He may have a flush draw like me. He may have a pair or two pair. Could have a straight draw. Could have a straight and a flush draw. He has something. He's not betting without something. We get another call. So I just call. Now, if I didn't have that flush draw, this would be a raise 100% of the time. But because I have the second nut flush draw, I can afford, I believe, to let a card peel. That isn't always going to work out for me, but the odds are in my favor. You can see I'm 81% at this point, give or take. This is a good spot for me to, slow down and try to let some people put some money into the pot. I will ultimately be raising, but I don't have to just pile in money now and push everybody out to protect my hand. Okay, so the turn is not really a good card for me, per se. It does give me an open-ended straight draw, 10, Jack, King, Queen. But, of course, it completes a straight. If somebody has Ace, King, if somebody has 9, King, they just hit a straight. I guess 8, 9 also hit a straight, although that's the dummy end. I don't know. This guy might play a hand like that big. I know that this player 2 won't. So I wasn't thrilled to see this card, but I still have a very strong hand. I still have, top set. I still have a second nut flush draw, and I have an open-ended straight draw. That's a pretty good amount of equity plus cards to improve. So he bets 35 cents into 50. So I know that he has a big part of this board. I don't necessarily think as big as me, but he could have something, similar. We get a call. So at this point, I don't really want another card to peel this cheaply. This is a little bit of a dangerous board to raise. Maybe I should just call here, but I decided to try to raise here because I really don't want somebody to have a straight draw or to have a 2 pair and see the final board that cheaply, and maybe, although a 2 pair doesn't have much a chance to beat me, but I just think this is the point where I've got to try to get some money in, and I still have a lot of outs. If my top set isn't good right now, if somebody has a straight, I still have a flush draw. And I still have a chance. If they have Ace King, well, any ace will give me a chop. So that's 3 more outs to chop, which will get me half the money at least and protect my equity, on top of the second nut flush draw. And of course, I could hit a full house. I have 10 more outs to improve there too. 3 10s, 3 jacks, 3 5s, and a queen for quads. That's 10 outs there. Theoretically, 9 outs for the flush. That's 19 outs. And then the 3, if an ace comes, that'll give me, nut straight. If somebody else has a straight, I'll chop with them. So that would give me 22 outs to win or chop the flop, chop this pot. 22 outs. That's 44% right there. That's enough to call a pot size bet or anything. That's a lot of that's a lot of outs, 22 outs. Only one card to come, but still. So I decide that is enough equity, and I go ahead and raise. Well, now this happens. Player 2 shoves all in. So this is similar to the last hand. What do I put him on to do this? Well, he could have a set of 10s. I'm fine with that. I have a higher set. He could have hit a set of jacks or something. I'm fine with that. More likely, though, I put him on Ace King. I think that he probably had Ace King and then something else. He may have had another pair or something with that. May have even had a flush draw with Ace King. Hopefully not a higher flush draw than mine. So if he has Ace King, he's beating me. And so the question is, this guy folds, do I have the equity to get my money in knowing that he's ahead of me? Because I'm almost positive he's sitting there with Ace King. I really am. So let's take a look. I did so here's Equilab. Okay. Now notice I put in my cards, King, Queen, Queen, 8. Here's the flop, here's the turn, and I gave him Ace, King, just random, and then 2 other cards, whatever they are. That gives him that. So you notice I have 45% equity. Okay, 45% of the time I should win this hand. All right? So now let's see, do I have the odds to call with 45% equity? So right now, the pot is $7.46. And I need to call how much? Is it the rest of my stack? Not, yeah, 28 cents left. Okay. So 309 less 28 cents. Okay. So that would be 279, 281. So I have to call $2.81 to win 746 plus 281. All right. So 7.46, the pot now, plus the 281 I have to call. 1027, that'll be the final pot. If I call, the pot will be 1027. Okay. We'll see that in a moment. And I have to call 281. In fact, if we advance this one, it should say 1020. There it is, 1027. Okay, so I have to call 2.81 to win 10.27. And again, bear in mind, I'm doing all this in my head within the 30-second time. There's no time bank at Bovada. I've got 30 seconds and that's it. My hand is folded. Okay. So I need 27% equity for this to be a break-even call. And what do I have? 45. I have literally not quite double, but 18% higher equity than I need. So I need to be good 27% of the time for this to be profitable, even though I know with absolute certainty that this player's ahead of me. I just know he has a straight. I'm going to be good, assuming I've got him on the correct range. And I'm giving him the nuts, by the way. Ace-King is going to give him the absolute nuts right now. I'm going to be good 45% of the time, so I definitely have the equity to call, even though I do not, I'm losing right now. So I call. Let's take a look. Now, unfortunately, he does have ace-king. I was right. The problem is he has the ace-high flush draw, too, which is a bit unlucky for me. I have the second nut either. So effectively, I have to hit one of my 10 outs to win here. I actually only have like 22% equity, not 45, because my flush draw is no good. I can still chop, though. So I have 13 outs. So I have about 28% equity here, about 28%. And you notice I needed right about 28% to call, right? So it's still, even knowing his cards, I had the odds to call because an ace will give me a chop and that protects my equity, right? If I fold, I just lose. So if I indeed have the 3 5s, the 3 10s, the 3 jacks, that's 9 outs. Another queen, that's 10 outs. And then the 3 aces will give me a chop. We'll both have the nut straight. So that's 13 outs. That's about 28%. I think I needed 27%, right? So it's a good call even knowing that he has my flush draw covered. So even with all that, I'm still going to break even or make a tiny bit of money in the long run to make this call. Once again, unfortunately, I don't hit. I do hit a straight, 9, 10, jack, queen, king, but he has a higher straight. And so I do lose my stack, but I was correct to get the money in. I had the odds. In the long run, I will make money making calls like that, even though I knew with 100% certainty, basically, that my opponent was ahead of me. So, in summation, in spots like this, it's very, very important to not only understand how to calculate your outs and your odds and, whether or not you made the call, but to understand your opponents, okay? Because that really is what was key. Knowing how tight this guy was, you notice that I gave him the range of the nuts. I may not have given him the nut flush draw. I had no way of knowing that. But notice when I ran the equity, I gave him ace-king. I gave him the stone cold nuts after the turn because I know that he's not shoving all in with anything less than that. And you need to know things like that in order to make the proper calculation. A lot of times I think people make mistakes because they don't. They look at the board and think, well, what are the odds he has ace king? Well, yeah, if the guy's playing 80-20, after a lot more than 5 hands, then maybe, yeah, you can't give him credit for that. But an opponent like me, or like this number 2, if we shove all in, we don't have anything less than that, really. Maybe on a board like this, the worst he would have had, I already had top set. He couldn't have. The only other hand I could have put him on really was top set. I don't think he shoves with a set of 10s or jacks. I'm fine if he does because I have a higher, but this board is so coordinated, I'm not so sure he does that. I think all he does it with is ace king. So you got to know your opponents, which guys would need the nuts to make a big play, which guys would do it with less, and then how to calculate what your percentages are and if a call is profitable or not. As always, guys, leave any questions or comments on the forum. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching, the few of you that do. And this has been CFTheNatural for grinderschool.com. Until next time, good luck at the tables.